Hi, everybody. So in that little snippet you just heard, that was Oprah Winfrey, the famous American talk show host, and she was talking about Henrietta Lacks. I will provide the link to that recording inside the transcript. Henrietta Lacks was an African American woman whose cervical cells helped science develop a vaccine for polio, do research on cancer, AIDS, HIV, measles. The list goes on. So we're going to talk about Henrietta Lacks later on in this episode and figure out how she contributed to science and the story behind how it all happened. So let's begin with a joke. And this one's a one-liner. So did you hear about the guy whose whole left side was cut off? He's all right now. Okay, so did you get that? Did you hear about the guy whose whole left side was cut off? In other words, it was amputated, was removed. He's all right now. All right being okay, but also all right. He's only the right side. His whole right side is left over. All right, so good one. Today's expression is taste your own medicine. I really like this expression. We're going to start by going through each individual word. To taste, right? To taste means to experience the flavor of something. Of course, you should taste your food before adding salt or pepper, in my opinion. But it's also for experience. For example, have you ever been snowboarding? Oh, I'd like to get a taste of that. Your is a determiner, and it indicates the belonging of the person to whom you are speaking. That's your coat. It's not mine. And I think if you understand me speaking at this speed, you know what your means. Own is an adjective and pronoun, and it indicates ownership of the person indicated. I tell my mom, taste your own medicine. It means to taste the medicine that maybe she herself created. Whereas if I said taste your medicine, it might be medicine that she bought at the store, for example. Medicine. Medicine is a noun, a substance, usually in liquid or in pill form, that's used to treat an illness or an injury. Great. So that expression, once again, taste your own medicine. Now, what does that mean? So, the definition of the expression is to receive the same mistreatment you've been giving to others, right? So you want to treat others the way you would like to be treated. That's the golden rule. But if someone is treating you badly, they're mistreating you, then you might want to give them a taste of their own medicine. You want them to feel exactly the way that you've been feeling because of their mistreatment. Does that make sense? So you might hear a few variations of this expression, such as, I'll give him a dose of his own medicine. So when we're taking medicine, we talk about doses. That's the portion or the size of the medicine, the amount of the medicine that we would take. Yeah, I'll give him a dose of his own medicine. That's another way to use that. So the origin of the expression, and well, according to idioms.com, the origin of this phrase can be found in one of Aesop's fables. It is about a swindler, and a swindler is a fraud, a person who cheats others for money or other objects. And so it is about a swindler who sells fake medicine, claiming that it cures anything. When he himself falls ill, people give him his own medicine, right? The medicine, the bad medicine, the fake medicine that he was giving out to others, they gave it to him, right? Which he knows, of course, will not cure him. So let's go through some examples of this expression so you can figure out how to use it in different contexts. Example number 1. Imagine that you're in high school. Okay, maybe you are in high school. And a group of bullies picks on you every day. They talk about how fat you are, how stupid you are. They make you feel like nothing. then one day you decide to get back at them. You want to take revenge. You want to give them a taste of their own medicine. You want to treat them in the same bad way they've been treating you. So you put giant spiders into their lunch bags when they're not looking. So that's definitely a way to give someone a taste of their own medicine. Put some spiders in their lunch bags. Example number 2. Imagine that you are a very punctual person. You're always on time for appointments and meetings, but you have a coworker who is always late. You schedule Skype calls with this coworker and he's 15 minutes late, lunch date 20 minutes late, and it drives you crazy. So you decide to give him a taste of his own medicine. The next business lunch that you have with him, you show up an hour late. You treated him the same way he treated you. In other words, you gave him a taste of his own medicine. Example number 3, and this one's a personal example. When I was in college, I lived actually next door to a big group of guys, 6 guys actually, and they always liked to play pranks on people, and especially their other roommates. So they played the prank on their roommate Raj, and Raj was a very nice guy. And one day when Raj was in class, they took his bed, his desk, his chairs, and all other items from his room and put them exactly in the same position on the balcony, so that when he came home, there was nothing in his room, but his room was set up on the balcony. And instead of getting mad or anything, he decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. And so he went into all of their rooms and put underwear and socks and clothing into each other's drawers. So it kind of confused them, waking up in the morning and putting on each other's underwear. All right. So let's go through a listen and repeat exercise. Repeat after me. Taste. Taste your. Taste your own. Taste your own medicine. Taste your own medicine. Taste your own medicine. Taste your own medicine. And let's do some conjugation as well. So repeat after me. I tasted my own medicine. You tasted your own medicine. She tasted her own medicine. He tasted his own medicine. We tasted our own medicine. They tasted their own medicine. It tasted its own medicine. Taste your own medicine. All right. So today, as I mentioned before, we're going to talk about Henrietta Lacks. Just a few months ago, I decided to read the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. You might not know her name, but I think if you took any classes in biology, you probably heard of Gila. And Gila comes from Henrietta Lacks, the first 2 letters of her first name and the first 2 letters of her last name. And Gila cells have impacted science in ways that are kind of unimaginable. We're going to go through that in a bit. Who was Henrietta? Henrietta was an African-American woman who grew up in Virginia and lived a fairly simple life. She worked the tobacco fields while she was growing up, and when she got older, she raised a family in Clover, Virginia. And life was going fairly well until one day she felt what she called a knot in her stomach. And a lot of her friends said, "Oh, you're probably pregnant again." But she said no. So she decided to go to the hospital. And at the time in 1951, there was a hospital called Johns Hopkins, which is now actually one of the most famous hospitals in the United States. I think it's ranked number 3. So she ended up at Johns Hopkins Hospital. That's a hospital that has a public ward, an area that serves all patients, regardless of race or financial situation. And I mentioned regardless of race or financial situation because up until 1965, Jim Crow laws still existed in the United States and separated the whites from the blacks or the African Americans. And so she decided to go to Johns Hopkins where the treatment would be free. And when she got there, her doctor, Howard Jones, decided to take a sample or a biopsy from her cervix where he saw the little lump or the knot that she was talking about and gave it to George Guy, who was the head of the research lab. And George was one of the scientists who was obsessed with the idea of immortalizing cells, right? So up until 1951, human cells would die in petri dishes just after a few days. But George thought it would be really wonderful if cells could reproduce, if they could become immortal. Why? So scientists grow cells inside of petri dishes to see how they work, and massive amounts of cells are needed in order to do tests. The cells also need to be exactly the same. Why? You can develop vaccines, medications, all without doing any sort of danger to patients or animals. And so, after a few days, the cells hadn't died. They kept reproducing, replicating. He took Henrietta's cells. He called them HeLa, and news spread like rapid fire. Any scientist, anyone working in the lab, heard about George's cells, the HeLa cells, and asked if they could have them. And of course, George really was interested in science progressing. And so he shipped cells for free around the world so that all of these scientists could also work on different things. Over the next years, Jonas Salk created a vaccine for polio. Work was done to understand measles, mumps, and HIV. It enabled labs to do cancer and AIDS research, recreate viruses, start gene mapping, understand DNA, right? So we got to know that cells have 46 chromosomes, and we were able to clone the first human cells. So Henrietta greatly contributed to science. But what's crazy is that she died of cervical cancer in 1951 and never found out the impact of her cells. In fact, the craziest thing of it all is that she never knew that her cells had been removed from her body, nor that they had been sent to labs, nor that they were tested. She had never given consent, right? In 1951, informed consent wasn't a topic. So if you went to the hospital and they amputated your leg, they could send your leg to the lab, do all the work they wanted on it, and you might never know. It wasn't protocol. So the interesting dilemma that happened is that her family also didn't know that her cells were being sent around the world and that so much research was being done on her cells. It wasn't until the 1970s, 20 years later, that they found out that their mom's cells existed in petri dishes around the world. So the Lacks family was very annoyed for not giving consent. And also the issue with money too, because these cells were commercialized. There were patents on them. Some scientists were earning thousands, millions of dollars, billions of dollars nowadays have been earned on HeLa cells, but the family has never earned a penny of it. And the Lacks family complained about not having enough money to pay for health insurance, although their mother contributed in such an incredible way to science. So, what do you think? What does the family deserve? Do they deserve money? Do they deserve recognition? Well, I think Henrietta's story became more well known through the book by Rebecca Skloot. This book brings a lot of recognition to Henrietta's character, to her life, her family, and brings up a lot of very controversial questions about, what's right and what's wrong inside of hospitals. It's interesting because at the end of the book, we get to hear a little bit more about when laws were created regarding the removal of tissues. Like, I didn't know, for example, that in the United States, if you get your arm chopped off, if you get it amputated inside of a hospital, the moment it's amputated, the hospital owns it. So you have to sign consent forms beforehand. Otherwise, whatever it is no longer your property. It's the hospital's property. I thought that was fairly interesting. So that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, bye.